All right, so suicide after divorce, 17 reasons why men give up on life. Dun, dun, dun. Men commit suicide after divorce at a rate of 3 to 4 times higher than women, which is a weird. I guess the point of comparison, but it's odd, honestly, because I've never heard, I've never really heard of a woman commit suicide after divorce. I, I barely hear about female suicide at all, really. Now I think about it. Might be a big thing. Maybe it is somewhere, but I can't be damned if the last I've heard of one. But I look left and right. Like I trip over dudes who killed themselves for just going to check the mail. Sorry, that was not appropriate. But yeah, the tipping point for many men is divorce. Yeah. So here's the thing that I especially wish a lot of young guys would start catching on. A lot of guys will start catching on to this eventually. Is that it's not that people don't know. It's not that they're not aware. They essentially just don't give a fuck. They don't care. And that's just how it is for a lot of shit. Like there's a lot like you got problems. There's a good majority of the world that one, they don't give a shit about your problems, and the other part, they're just happy you have them. They're like, good, fuck that dude. Professor, hoity-toity, is part of a team fighting male depression and suicide. Goddamn. Divorce is a significant factor in suicide because divorced men are at high risk of becoming isolated. Now, I do want to point something out. As far as it goes, currently, men are isolated, period. Like, there's no real communities anywhere. I remember I was scrolling through something and there was a clip of a comedian talking about you can't go in Legoland if you're single. So if you're a dude, it's like, hey, I'm a customer, I got money, I want to go in Legoland and fuck around with some Legos. They won't let you because kidnapping risk and shit like that. Now I have no point of validity on that information, but I'm like, I mean, I've heard enough, and I heard enough shit, and I see how people are. Like, yeah, I could run with that. And it's just like you see how people kind of look and treat you when you're a single male in society. It's like, yeah, they don't want you around for shit. Which is funny because a lot of these dudes, which I'm not funny, haha, funny, but it's like a lot of these dudes, they treat other guys like shit. They're married, they got their family. Like, fuck that dude, get away from here, fucking weird ass, lonely dude. What the fuck is he around here for? And then they become that. And you would think there'd be a moment of reflection or insight, like anybody would just no, that's just not gonna happen. That's just how it is. So the thing that I think probably destroys the shit out of a lot of these dudes is one, because they did have this identity, they had this life, they had this, this companionship, all this shit going on, and it essentially was the rug was pulled from under them because they had this idea of it's going to be this long lasting thing. I'm valued, I'm a human, da da da. And you'll see these moments where, and I've seen guys where they talk about things, events, and all this shit, and it doesn't click with them. You know what I mean? It doesn't click with them. Like, hey, what's the difference between you and that other guy? And I think it's just a moment in time. I think that's it, because they don't see themselves as about to go through those same issues. They don't see it as a possibility for them because quote unquote they're different. Well, I guess because right now in your circumstances you're at a different period than they are in theirs, but essentially the only thing that separates you from somebody else are a lot of times just the decisions you make, and well, environment and shit like that. But yeah, it's a lot of times the decisions. So as far as this goes, being isolated while also dealing with some shit can actually be pretty damaging to somebody. You don't have, because here's the thing: some people, the isolation and shit like that, they get used to it. They deal with the demons. They carry on. They rebuild themselves, all that shit. But it's not something that you would kind of task somebody with doing. It's like one of those things where if you have to, you have to. But ideally, that's not how you would fucking go about things. Because it's real easy for a lot of thoughts. Basically it's easy for you to drown in your own head. Most people aren't. There's not a good person up there. There's not a friend up there. Let's just say that. A lot of the messages and bullshit that is streamed at them a lot. A lot of all that bullshit. The reason why you should stay off social media and shit like that. A lot of all that, the societal messages, all that shit. A lot of the shit that you got growing up and everything. That's just drilled into your head that you repeat at yourself. You know, a lot of that, a lot of those messages, a lot of those phrases, a lot of those thoughts, a lot of that mindset, which is only being held up by you. You're the only person keeping that alive in there. And what happens is that shit ends up intensifying. There's a lot of different effects that happen with being isolated, but the mental one is the biggest thing because it eventually affects your health as well. Now, if you add in depression because somebody just had a loss of identity, they can't see their fucking kids, you know what I'm saying? They love this bitch and she did this to them. And now take on the fact of mentally they're going to be kind of a little traumatized because think about it. As far as they were concerned, they were loved. This was their society, their community, you know, their country, you know, they're respected and things work like this. The law matters and all this other shit. And now they just got curb stomped by essentially everyone and everything. So you're isolated, you're damaged, you're hurt, you don't know how to make sense of shit, your identity is destroyed, you essentially don't know how to live right now. And so since a lot of guys don't see any future, any hope or anything with that, they just off themselves. Like it's not gonna stop. Like you're damaged as shit, but they still want their money. You still gotta go to work. You still have to do shit. Life basically just goes on, and essentially yours is already dead. Yours just got killed. Like there was a version of you that just got killed. And yeah, you still need to take your ass to work in the morning with all that shit going on. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, essentially, let's say you make it through the tunnel. You make it through the darkness. You're on the other side. And now you're going through, you're rebuilding your shit and everything. Now you're going to get attacked. So, you know, a lot of guys, you know, they love their kids. They're going to be there for the kids, all this shit like that. So you're going to get attacked. You're going to get accused of all this fucked up shit. They'll accuse you of molesting your kids, to do whatever, to make sure you don't have custody. And also they want to make sure they keep tabs on you, like your income and shit like that. Because if you get an increase, as far as they're concerned, they just got an increase. So they want more. And one of the biggest ways that you deal with someone to keep them in it is you have to play mind games with them. You have to basically alter their behavior, and you have to keep sort of an emotional peg on them. Like you need to make sure you can tune in and you can sort of wind them up when you need to get them to react and behave how you need to. But you also need this thin little line. Now this thin little line is the lie. It's the lie of identity. It's the lie of some type of hope, of some existence that technically, one, it's not real, and two, even if it was, it doesn't exist anymore. Because remember, you're just feeding them this. Now this manipulative bullshit that goes on. Now so some people like to blame the guy, like you're an asshole for falling for it. It's like, no, come on, fuck you. That's not even fair right there. Like that shit happens. Like this type of thinking and shit like that. That doesn't get put into your brain overnight. Like it's real. And you got to remember, we're pretty idealistic about shit. So we can keep a lot of hope and a lot of bullshit in our heads. And that feeling, that want to be vulnerable with somebody, to have somebody love you, have somebody care for you, to have a family, you know, those instinctual drives and all that shit, that's just strong. Those are instincts. Those don't just get turned off because, you know, I don't know, you watched a couple red pill videos or some shit. I don't know what motherfuckers be thinking now. They act like they're not human. It's like, that's not the case. You're human. And just whatever got to that motherfucker, they can do the same to you. And if you're just like, hey, I've got all these defenses and knowledge, well, that means it just takes a little bit longer to wear you down, but you will go down. So, you know. So you make it through all that, and now you're getting all this shit thrown at you. You're getting attacked, accosted. And other men, they'll want to basically show their virtue, you know, just pander to the omnipotent pussy and basically assault you, trash you, gossip you. One thing I want a lot of guys to understand. So a tactic a person will use is they will essentially pretend to be on your side, like false flagging or whatever, not false flagging. Pretend to be on your side. Like, is it turncoating? I can't remember what it is. But basically, like spying, whatever you want to call it. They pretend to be on your side. They pretend to be empathetic. And all they're doing is gathering information from you. Now, the point that they're going to be doing is they're just going to be funneling information from you to whoever, and most of the time it's like their ex or some shit like that, and that's going to be their point where it doesn't bring up any suspicion because you trust them. And yeah, you'll be like, what benefit do they fucking get? What the fuck, betraying my trust like that? Easy. They just got all those pussy points. They just got to see. Since you're a bad man, you ain't shit. You ain't getting no bitches. You ain't getting no vagina. You ain't got no kids. You a deadbeat dad. But they get to be the good man by throwing you under the bus. They're like, oh, he isn't shit. And so they're talking in your face, acting like your friend. People do this on many different levels, but it's something that you should always be aware of. And one thing that's a really good way to practice, for when you don't know, like you don't know who's on your side and who's not. One is remember that people gossip. It's a social mechanism. It's not mechanism. It's sort of like an instinct, but it's also sort of, let's call it like social lubricant.